Morning all. Barnet were playing Wanstead Chess Club last night at home. I think there's a few instructive themes in here. In all honesty, I think I was a bit worn out from the two consultation games, which I shouldn't have had directly before this over-the-board game. So on the subject of ergonomics and wearing oneself out for online and offline, I sure did for online just before the game. But you know, because it was a home match, it was only like a very quick drive to get there to the club in Barnet. And okay, I mean, D.Sands I've known from a junior. He's been very strong. He's got a very high ECF rating of about 211 at the moment. I've beaten him once though in this league. I think it's on a video as well, and I've drawn with him in a tournament as well, dramatic, when I was 3 pawns down. I've sometimes had a result against him. It hasn't always been that I've been crushed by him. Okay, so I was playing white on board 1. The team won anyway against Wanstead last night, which was a good thing, but this wasn't the greatest game. Okay, so e4 c5, and I thought I'd punt the Morra Gambit, which yeah, usually in tournaments etc. I get good results with this, and believe it or not, he accepted. He didn't play knight f6, he accepted the gambit, so I was kind of a little bit more into the game. But as I say, I think I was a bit worn out because it was the intensity, I think, of the consultation games. I don't like making excuses. I just think it has a bearing though that I wasn't as fresh as I could have been for this game. And also, I think you know, maybe online blitz rewards the wrong things. I've read that recently. Someone was saying about blitz and bullet rewarding the wrong things, and I think, you know, even though I've played loads and loads of games in the Morra, you know, there's particular subtleties coming up of the position here after knight c6, which you wouldn't really pick up in a bullet game. Which rewards completely different things, like, you know, you have to play quickly even if it's not a perfect move, but in long games there's more rewarding for striving for perfection. But you'll see here d6 is putting a little bit of a break on e5. After bishop c4 we see a6. Now this secures the b5 square, but there's actually two reasons for playing a6, not just to stop white using b5, but also, you know, maybe b5 b4 later, possibly to develop the bishop to b7 to put pressure on e4. But this point about knight b5 in conjunction with this d6 and knight c6 is actually geared up to make e5 less of a problem for black. So black can even do this next move after castling. Black can even do e5, sorry, knight f6 here, because e5 is not very successful in this position. I had somehow thought, I've confused myself, that maybe, you know, the position without a6, then you know, maybe, you know, like say g6, that would be a problem. e5, more of a problem maybe. But here, e5 is no problem at all. The reason is I totally blundered playing this move. I should have just carried on normal development. It's absolutely terrible, really. You know, bishop g5, and I would have been in a sort of comfortable game that I would have liked, and that would have been fun, and maybe a different result for the game. Who knows? It would have been a Morra game, more respectable. But no, I go and play e5 with this miscalculation in mind that after like takes, I would have had knight e5. So the idea, I was thinking I was going to win the queen with bishop f7 and queen d8 if knight takes e5. But then in my calculations, I suddenly thought, hold on a sec. Okay, so queen d1, there's rook d1, by the way. Oh, sorry, bishop f7 first, and then rook d1. But I thought, hold on a sec, this knight can just take here, and if bishop takes f7, then there's just knight takes f7, and that knight's actually protecting the queen. So I thought, blimey, that's interesting. I don't think I've ever noticed that in bullet chess when I've been playing e5. strange how the knight can come round like this and protect the queen. I thought, after d takes e, I also thought, there's not even queen d8 here, he can just take with the king, because, as I mentioned before, knight b5s have been ruled out. Bishop e6 would, bishop f7, there might be e6 almost like trapping the bishop, so it's no good to try and win that pawn. So this wouldn't be particularly amazing. Let's just engine check this position just to make sure. So here, queen takes d8. Actually, best. Pardon me. If king takes d8, there is an advantage for white still with knight g5. Okay. It gets a bit. Well, it's not that hairy. No, just taking f7. So what black has to do against e5 is in this position rather. If there was queen takes d8, to play knight takes d8, and possibly this is what I should have played with a minimal disadvantage. Compared to the game anyway. So knight takes e5, e6, but with the queens off, you don't really want a position, the queen's off and a pawn down, particularly, psychologically. But rook d1, there's a little bit of pressure though. So if a casual knight c6, maybe taking knight a4, there's still targets in black's position. So what I played was even worse though. I should have taken on d8 really. To get the pawn back immediately. No, but I played queen e2, which gives black a nice game. He plays e6, so that really blunts the bishop. So there's very good positional play, I think it's got to be said, from D.Sands. So even though, okay, I was made to look terrible, but he's a good player anyway. So it's instructive from that point of view. So I take on e5, but thinking. I'm sort of back in the game here, because if he defended with queen c7, maybe this is kind of interesting, this position, I thought. What was I actually thinking here? I was thinking maybe bishop g5. Well, I didn't think it was that clear. Maybe knight d5 here is good actually, to try and undermine e5 again indirectly if knight d5, bishop d5, threatening bishop c6. Okay, but he didn't actually choose queen c7. I think queen c7 is a good move, probably one of the better moves. But e6 is also good. So I take on e5. Okay, he's got a slight problem here, but this b5 and bishop b7 could happen later. Or, without using b5, the bishop could just come like this. And it's a strong diagonal for the bishop, because my bishop's blunted out, so he's actually getting a superior quality light squared bishop here. But first there's this queen kind of attacking which goes on quite a lot in this game. Queen harassment on both sides. But g5, I just play bishop takes g5. That'll be fine. So I thought, oh, that's nice. My queen's parked there. Could be good for an attack. So actually I thought at this point in the game, at move 13, I thought it was still okay. So I chased the queen. I chase the queen. Well, I get ready to chase the queen now with bishop d3, and also for bishop h6. If castling, I'm tempted for bishop h6, although it might not be too sound. I thought it was like dangerous, but actually no. I think this is unsound. Queen h5. So it's good I didn't play that. If he just castled, it's probably kind of safe. If we get into that actually in more detail, just queen e5. If g4 is needed, why would g4 be needed? Otherwise queen h5. Okay, so that would be defending for black. So he didn't castle though, which made the game kind of interesting. He just improved the quality of his pieces, particularly the queen's bishop. Now this queen's also got a lot of squares to harass my queen on h4. So it goes there, and then we have bishop c6. Maybe queen g4 is also interesting here. So I rule out soon actually the use of the g4 square. I play in this position h3 to try and further harass the black queen. So again at move 20, Okay, it's like minus 0.51 here on the engine evaluation. Okay, I mean, obviously I've played the Morra-Smith Gambit. The important thing really was to keep some tension going and the queen's on, which has been achieved. But it's not that pleasant for me, especially this H5 move now, which does seek to gain space. It's quite horrible. I can't take on G7 unless I want to get massacred with Rook G8 and then like Rook G2 and then get mated. So basically this move is gaining space. It's using my queen to gain space. Rather uncomfortable. But I try and attack David's queen, and that goes all around the houses again. Again back to E5, A5. We have this amusing game. So how many places has this queen gone? But the thing is, I'm faced now with the queen actually getting a nice parking location, H5. Once he gets in H4, the H5 square is kind of neat. And also this move serves to sort of emphasize dark square constraints in my position, because it's sealing like G3 and as well as giving H5. So I'm getting a bit squashed actually with this move H4. So I play Queen E3. Now Queen H5, nice parking location for the queen. So black's steadily getting a better and better advantage. This bishop's very neat on the diagonal, very solid here. So it's now becoming safe. It's castle, but first knight D5, very nice move. In fact, this move isn't too nice, allowing knight D5. I didn't realise how strong that would be. Best probably is to continue trying to harass the queen. So say this position, even if the queens came off, at least there'll be something to play for here. You know, there's a bit of structural, you know, that's probably better than the game. So I should have been willing really to get the queens off, but I think I made things a little bit worse now. So knight D5, big knight. It's almost not just G3, but F4 is emphasized, and also there's possibilities, pardon me, of bishop G5 if the knights ever dislodged. And also we see that the D file is a problem potentially. These pieces are all sitting on the D file of the queen there. It's vulnerable for Rook D8, and so now he finally castles, and then Rook D8. It's uncomfortable for me, but I'm thinking maybe C5 could be used here. So I'm playing knight C5. Unfortunately, the weakness of the last move, it's a bit of a disaster because bishop G5 is a skewer, so that was a bit of a major blunder as well. This game hasn't been going too well really all round, but here this is a terrible move. Also F5 is apparently a very strong move, probably winning on the spot as well, because the knight moves now, bishop G5. It's even worse than the game apparently. But let's see. So instead of Rook AC1, I was just thinking of, you know, getting the knight C5. So maybe, okay, so bishop C5 is better. Oh dear, I was really missing a lot of stuff in this game. It's got to be said. So bishop G5 here. Sorry, after knight C5, bishop G5 is very painful. I get a terrible pawn now on E3. And it's around this time we're reaching move 30, and yet another aspect of this game is revealed. The clock, we're using digital clocks, and they're supposed to give 15 minutes after for a second time control. And I was a bit late for the game, rushing to the game, and I didn't set the clock. And I don't know about clock modes, but I seem to remember that in past games, and this is a total mystery now, I thought it's when I've reached 0 that the clock gives me an extra 15 and waves this flag, you know, this digital flag springs up. I seem to remember that. And David's asking me, will I get my, you know, extra time? Am I going to run out of time? And I said, it adds 15 minutes when you get to 0. That's what I said to him, and I believed it. And the thing is, this is the funny thing, and I'm usually quicker than opponents, so I don't know why this happened last night, but it seems when his clock went to 0 very soon, I think just about before move 30, the clock also actually added 15 minutes to my time, and I didn't make a mental note of that. I thought that I had loads of extra time and I hadn't reached 0 yet, and when I did reach 0 I get an extra 15 minutes. Anyway, it's just as well my position was diabolical. But, so I just assumed I was yet to reach naught for the 15-minute, bonus. Yeah? So David got his extra 15 minutes around about this time now, and was reassured. And I reassured him, yeah, no problem. Okay. So anyway, so I support my knight on c5, and it's a diabolical position. It really is. Actually, that's just, what's the engine evaluation here? It's like minus 2.69 now. There's a lot of structural damage, and a5 is also going to undermine the position even more, loosen even more pawns, which he's about to do. So queen g5, that nice targets to torture. Nice bishop on the diagonal. I've been positionally slaughtered. Look at black's really solid pawn structure and the space, the clamping of the space, the dark square space. Loads and loads of positional trump cards for black here. So more solid pawn structure, less pawn islands. I've got 3 pawn islands. I'll colour them in different colours. Okay, so you get the picture, and my pieces are all loose as well. My king's a bit loose with g2 as an issue, so it's a diabolical position. But anyway, I play queen f2 with the idea of maybe attacking f7. He undermines the c5 knight, and there's a point here, a curious point, where he actually does a retreat, bishop e8, which isn't seen as a very good move at all, and he goes actually from minus 2.77 here technically to like minus 0.94. Because here there's an amazing idea, which I completely missed, of decoying that bishop to exploit that vulnerability, to play bishop b5. So here's a variation. Say takes, check, knight takes e6, so hitting g5 and g7. And now if queen not queen f6, there's rook f6. If queen h6 can take here, and I've reached a position which might actually even be okay for me. If bishop f1, knight takes d8, winning. So if to the rook moves, and then rook f8, knight takes f8, and we get this is just an engine line. We get an interesting position like this. It's a long engine variation. But anyway, I completely missed bishop b5 as a decoy. That sometimes happens when I've been feeling terrible during an over the board game. Sometimes there are vulnerabilities that engines pick up in the opponent's king position. Sometimes in another game, I think against Lime, it was like h7. But in this game, it was f7. These kind of tactical things which you get a bit depressed during the game, and you're not really looking out for like sparkling tactics on these sensitive key squares, but they potentially still exist, even though you were like positionally wrecked, and this is as wrecked as you can be with like 3 pawn islands against the opponent's much more solid position, seemingly very pretty with the 2 bishops. But the prettiness is not completely there, because functionality wise, because bishop b5 to decoy the bishop away from f7, but it's something I missed, and I just play bishop e4 instead. And the advantage is still massively in black's favour. But I'm really thinking at move 34, I'm yet to get my 15-minute bonus time, which I've just explained to David. Yeah, you get 15 minutes when your clock goes to 0. Now, I'm not sure if that was another clock mode that I've had in different games. These digital clocks have a number of modes at the reverse side to choose from. And I wonder now, I don't know if there's any digital clock experts out there, is it possible what I'm saying is true, that it's a different clock mode to either when one of the players reaches 0 on the clock, for both players to get the extra second time control, or can it happen individually that that only they get the extra second time control when they reach 0, and when you reach 0 you get it when you reach 0? Is that happens, or is it always both players? I'm not 100% sure now, and I think I should get a digital clock, the same one the club uses now, to experiment with all the modes. But anyway, so bishop e4, I'm glad the position was terrible really anyway, because what's about to happen with this administrative clock blunder is I'm going to lose the game on time pretty soon, because I'm playing very leisurely, not thinking I've only got a few minutes left, and David's like getting into his last 5 minutes, so I'm thinking he's really used his time so leisurely, that's why I've got so much extra time. But the thing is, okay, so f5, and I'm thinking, oh, there might be some weaknesses here in black's position. I might have knight d8s appearing. So I play bishop f3. In fact, let's check an engine evaluation at this point. It's now gone even worse to -4 point whatever. It's getting worse and worse because this knight's actually vulnerable as well, let alone the disastrous pawn structure, etc. But I think really, as I say, I think a lot of decision making is kind of impaired if you're tired for a game. It's not good. You know, if you're like going to run a marathon, it's not good to run a marathon just before running a marathon. You got to like, you do your training, but the training shouldn't be like exhausting you before the marathon. And in chess, if you're like mentally exhausted before the game, it's like you've lost before the game has begun. But anyway, this is a terrible position, and actually he plays a very, very good move here, which Rybka really likes. That bishop comes back into the game with a vengeance, so with a big positional threat. So I play a move to contest c2, just about holding on to e3, if rook c1, queen c1. But he plays actually rook b8, and I play a disastrous blunder which should have lost on the spot now. I play knight d8, and the killer move here is just to use this dark square control with bishop d6 threatening a mate, because he's got it covered now. There's no rook d6. He's rook d6 and I'm losing the knight. So that would have ended the game on the spot, but he played bishop g5 instead, which is still good but not as incisive obviously as bishop d6. I mean, where would my king go after bishop d6? If I play here, I'm probably going to get mated or something. Check. Oh, he just takes on d8. Sorry, that's one of the points here why this is so good as well. The knight was in trouble from way back. So this is one of my worst games against D.Sands, but also what makes it even worse is just losing the game on time, thinking I'm going to get an extra 15 minutes. So anyway, I hope there's something you take from this game, and maybe find out about digital clocks yourself, and just be clear in your own mind with the digital clock modes. If your chess club or whatever gets digital clocks, that what happens in your clock modes when you reach 0? Is it both sides that added 15, or is it just your side and your opponent will get 15 when he reaches 0? So it's important to be clear about those things. But anyway, let's have a brief run through this game again. So a disaster all round last night for me personally, but the team Barnet managed to win anyway. So that was pretty cool. We actually won this league last year, and I didn't even lose one game, but I was playing on lower boards. So that's another thing. If you get a higher rating in the club, you're just going to be on a higher board the next season, and so basically I think it's good to enjoy the ride. Forget about losing or winning, just to try and enjoy the ride, because you know, one season's going to be maybe a lot of wins, the next season's maybe a few losses. Important to enjoy the ride. Okay, so very strong player anyway, gaining space, really exploiting all my blunders, and I'm really playing a lot of blunders in this game. This is just terrible for my pawn structure, my poor pawn structure. 2 islands going to 3 here after knight c5. I have some vague ideas. The weakness of the last move, Maurice Ashley, the weakness of the last move here, the knight's controlling g5, but it is vulnerable to f5s anyway. So I'm thinking, I don't know why I was thinking rook c1, maybe bishop a6 as I was thinking. If the rook moves, maybe there might be bishop a6 possibilities later. So I thought this was a good idea, and also to support c5. So it had some logical grounding to it to play rook c1. It's just unfortunately on the skewer line, but the unfortunate thing about the queen, it's on the d file anyway. So the position's kind of diabolical in any case, meaning that blunders are very, very likely in any case. So here, knight c5. So I'm increasing my pawn islands now by having to play bishop e3 unless I want to go to the exchange down. And that e3 is just miserable. The only point of e3 is the f file. And so the f file, the kind of cheap tactical ideas which engines really love and find all the magic relating like to any weakness around the opponent's king is revealed here. That after this retreat, no, I didn't really consider bishop b5, funny enough. But bishop b5 is nice to try and undermine black's king safety. But instead I play bishop e4. And the knight ends up getting stranded. I mean, another move in this position, which might be better than what I played, is simply a3, actually. If a3, but this is still terrible, actually. It takes the b6, kicking that knight. So queen e5. I think there's a constant threat because of this h4 pawn. There's a constant threat of f5 and bishop d6. Just kick the knight first from d6 and then play bishop d6. So getting a pawn here is a very lovely facility Black has got here, squeezing the dark squares. And without a dark square bishop, I'm really just waiting to be mated on dark squares, actually, in some variations. But okay, let's just go back to the game. So the knight also got stranded. Truly horrendous game. And just learn from the mistakes, and Black had good play. I think that's the instructive bits. Black's play was instructive, and the clock issue maybe was interesting to check out. If you've got any insecurities of your understanding of digital clocks, it's worth sharpening that understanding, I think. I was just convinced somehow I had an extra 15 minutes coming to me, so managed to lose on time as well. But thankfully, I say thankfully, it was a lost position anyway, and there was a clear knockout blow here with bishop d6. If I had been in a totally winning position, I think I would have been more gutted. And funny enough, I think I slept okay last night. I think I was just too exhausted by events and the fact that the game was messed up anyway. So losing on time was just part of the disaster. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.